Welcome to Community Roundtable. I'm Nick Burns from the Salt Lake Community College Communication Department, and I'm your host as we explore topics of special interest and special concern to the residents of the cities and the unincorporated areas of Salt Lake County. And these are topics that are equally important, we feel, to the general public throughout all the state of Utah. And today on the show, Salt Lake Community College is the largest institution of higher education in all of Utah. Salt Lake Community College is what's called a comprehensive community college. Students can learn psychology or chemistry or English, but students can also learn to drive a truck, become a paralegal or a nurse. So today on Community Roundtable, we'll delve into Salt Lake Community College, its diversity, its student services. We'll look at what makes a college a community college. And joining us, she is the interim president of Salt Lake Community College, Dr. Deneece Huftalin. Dr. Huftalin, thanks for doing this.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Oh, good. So you come to this interim president position from the student services side of higher education. And it seems to me that very seldom gets talked about. When people think of college, it's the professors and the boards and the bushy eyebrows. But tell me about that whole other part of college, the student services part.
Yeah, I think sometimes it depends on the student. Sometimes students recognize who student services are and what we do for them, but it's a minority at a community college. Really, we're behind the scenes. We were many times behind the scenes, unless you're in trouble, or your financial aid hasn't gone through, or you really have some academic advice that you need. A lot of our students navigate to and from class and really don't engage as much with student services, but we're behind the scenes providing tutoring, financial aid assistance, registration, online information, admissions, all of those things that are kind of a backbone, if you will, of letting them have a strong learning experience.
And I mean, your background yourself, you came up through advising, correct?
I did, yeah. I started here 22 years ago.
Wow, congrats.
As the director of academic and career advising. So in that role, I was really working with all of our academic advisors and our career advisors, helping students kind of discover their educational path, what were they passionate about, helping them figure out their career choices, and then trying to keep them on that path so they could graduate. But
yet you say so few students actually step up to use student services? Are a lower percentage here taking advantage of that than say at the U or Dixie or somewhere else?
Oh, I think it depends on. The reason I say that is that a lot of our students come and go to class because of all of the other things they have going on in their life. They're working full time, they have a family, they're a parent, etc. So finding time to navigate in and see an advisor or sit and maybe get engaged with the Thane Center and do community service, some of those kind of more traditional engagement opportunities that students have at college, sometimes our students find that they don't have the time for that. So we struggle sometimes to get students in to see an academic advisor or to make the time to come in and learn about student employment opportunities because they're kind of in their own world, right? They're in the real world and they've got to navigate all that time.
I mean, we're certainly a commuter campus, right?
Yeah.
We don't have people in the dorms. We don't have that sort of in loco parentis thing going on at all here.
Right.
But yet, the number I've read was 30,000 Salt Lake Community College students needed financial aid last year.
Yes. So we have actually it's higher than that.
Wow.
I think the number's a little bit more than 40,000.
Wow.
And also, 40% of our students get loans. So they're using the financial aid office, don't get me wrong. I mean, they're taking advantage of FAFSA, they're doing the federal financial aid and scholarships. But in terms of coming in and actually meeting with a financial aid advisor and really mapping out their pathway, a lot of students kind of do it on the run and in between class, and they don't have the same kind of time and energy maybe to build the relationships that they could in some of those services.
I mean, is that like a marketing issue? Are students not aware, or just like you say, too busy?
I think it's both.
Okay.
I often go into classes for freshmen and I talk about the services and I ask how many people have been in the student center, and they'll raise their hand. And I'll say, how many of you know that you could have an academic advisor that you can meet with? No clue. How many of you have ever used our student employment services? No idea. How many of you have been to health and wellness services? If you're uninsured, do you know you can come in and get all sorts of counseling, clinic? No idea. So I don't know. I mean, it's a good question. Some of our students say, I just don't have the time. Some students say, I don't even know what that means, really. So we have to do a better job of explaining why you would want to engage with those services.
Okay, thank you. Here we are at the community college, and we're also the home to many, many, many first-generation college students. And I think we all know that, social reproduction is the single greatest indicator of college success.
Right.
So how are we doing, do you think, in terms of taking those first generation students and successfully pushing them out the door and making them fly, so to speak?
I think we're doing a great job,
Okay.
actually. I think we're going to have to do more of that as we try to meet the governor and the president's 2020 goal, the 66% of folks having a certificate or a degree. The only way to achieve that goal is by reaching out to students who really never had college in their future, probably because mom and dad didn't know about college. So I think we're going to have to strengthen our efforts, but I would say of all of the colleges in Utah, we have a strong commitment. We have great support services. We have ways of engaging with first generation students that I think are less intimidating than some of our sister institutions, that are softer, where they find their confidence, they find their kind of wings, and by the time they transfer to another institution, I'm thinking of one particular student who walked in here just so timid and shy and didn't think he should be at college, got messages his whole life he shouldn't be in college. By the time he left here and went to the University of Utah, he was highly engaged, graduated as a civically engaged scholar, went to the University of Utah, became very involved on their campus, and now he's going to Columbia University for his master's degree. First generation student, mom and dad never had high school or never had college.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's the exception. I think that happens a lot here.
Yeah. Well, I can think of one student from a couple of years ago who his dad specifically did not want him to be here, didn't want him to go to college.
Yeah.
And he was first generation, first chance, first opportunity. So not only did he have all those struggles, but then he actually had it at home where his dad was like, you shouldn't go.
Yeah. And that was because he wanted him to work or what? Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of pressure, especially in some of our communities, for the student to contribute economically to the family, just for financial reasons, right? And that's okay. I get that. One of our, I think, what's incumbent on us then as an institution is to say, how do we help those students work on our campus? How do we create more jobs so that you can still be an economical contributor to your family, but you can also get your education alongside, and you're not disrupting that. That's the breaking point for many of our students.
That would be ideal.
Yeah, and we do that. So we have our on-campus student employment program. This last year, we were finally able to base fund that program. So we didn't grow it, but now it's solid funding, and if we could grow that, we could employ more and more students on campus.
Do you know what percentage of students work on campus?
87% of our students. On campus,
Right.
I don't know that percentage. 87% of all of our students work.
So 9 out of 10 are working
are
somewhere.
working somewhere.
Uh-huh.
The more we could get working on, our different sites and campuses, I think the better for us
Okay.
and for them.
All right.
Yeah.
This is, something to talk about, and I want to get into this when we get back, and that's this notion of inclusion, because we
Yes.
are a place that's incredibly diverse.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you about some of that, because
Okay.
a lot of students come up through K through 12 not really treated equally, and yet we have to treat them equally here.
Yeah.
So keep it tuned. We'll be right back with more Community Roundtable with Dr. Deneece Huftalin, Interim President of Salt Lake Community College. Welcome back to Community Roundtable, talking with Dr. Deneece Huftalin, Interim President, Salt Lake Community College. And when we left off, we were talking about how, this is a college for first generation students. This is a college where we've got veterans, single moms, people working. I've had students working 60 hours a week and going to school. And yet at the same time, we are the most diverse institution in the state.
Yeah.
It's actually one reason I like teaching here.
I agree.
So tell me a little bit about what the college has to do, or what we are doing in terms of inclusion.
Yeah. I think that naturally over the last few years, because our structural diversity has shifted, and what I mean by that is the number of students coming from diverse backgrounds, kind of the racial and ethnic diversity, has shifted significantly. Much of that is to our credit. We've really tried to actively recruit and help succeed, help students from diverse backgrounds succeed. But I think that Salt Lake Community College is, because we're so diverse, it makes our academic learning richer. It makes our experience on campus richer. I have students say that they love being in a classroom where they have someone that's just been coming back from being deployed and has this veteran experience to talk about. They have a 70-year-old person in the class who's coming back who wants to learn a new trade. And they have people from all over cultures. So not only does it help those maybe underrepresented students succeed, but I think it's actually an educational asset to have a really rich, diverse academic experience in the classroom where you can hear different perspectives and different histories. So I love working here. Every time I walk across the quad and I see really diverse folks, I just think this is a cool place to be, especially in Utah. Utah's not a hugely diverse place. And so for me, it's a really nice reminder that there is diversity in Utah and that we get to educate and learn in it every day.
So we're open admission.
Yes.
Anyone can come to school here.
Yep.
How's that play out in terms of actual outreach? I mean, do we as an institution go searching for people from this community or that community?
Yep.
Where there's so much in the media about affirmative action and quotas and all that.
Right,
How's
right.
that impact what we do?
So traditionally our recruitment efforts have been really high school focused, right? So we've had a school relations office that we've had for decades that have gone into the high schools and really started working with 10th, 11th, and 12th graders to get them on the path and to pitch the college. And we do that alongside all of our sister institutions across the state. So the goal there is to get students thinking about college. Would we like them to come to Salt Lake Community College? Yes, absolutely. But the thing about college is it's got to be the right fit. Some students want a really big university football experience, and other students want a really small, kind of liberal arts focused experience. And so part of our job is to get students to think about what do they want. If there's someone that's a little nervous about school, if there's someone that really wants an affordable option, if there's somebody that wants small class sizes, we've got a lot of things to offer, and that's what we're talking to high school students about. So naturally that high school population is more diverse, right? If you look at all of the schools we're going into, there's multiple languages being spoken at home, and so we're seeing that diversity coming up through the pipeline. But we're also looking at the working adults and asking them, what do you need to do to come back to retrain? What could you learn that would make you a better, more employable in your own industry and help you kind of advance and have some upward mobility? So that's where that diversity comes in, age and experience as well.
And to me, that doesn't seem to get talked about quite as much either. I mean,
No.
for instance, we teach all the Honda mechanics,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
If there's a new Honda model and something new needs to be
Right.
dealt with differently, we do that. It
Yep.
isn't all just go to class and have a lecture, but
Right.
we have this custom fit kind of education
Yep.
model. And it seems to me that's part of what makes us a comprehensive community college.
Yes, definitely. So comprehensive community college, to have that title, you have to essentially be we're looking at general education, we're looking at transfer education. So we're contributing to students' pathway to move on to a baccalaureate degree. But we're also really connected to the workforce development needs of our community. So that's where places like our automotive program and the Honda mechanics, our aviation program, L3 communications, that all our composites, plastics, all of those things. We're trying very hard to strengthen industry relationships so that, in fact, I was just talking to Jeff Edwards, the CEO of EDC Utah, to say, when he's going out recruiting companies to come to Utah, they want to know that there's educational partners here that will help train that workforce if they need that. So if I'm a composites manufacturer, I want to know that I have a good workforce here that I can tap into. And Salt Lake Community College, I think over the last few years has really strengthened those partnerships. Again, I think we have more work to do there, but we're seen as an industry partner in that way.
Does that pay off, that sort of outreach and that sort of connection to economic growth and bringing in new jobs? How does that, and I don't mean to be crude, but how does that pay off in terms of the legislature?
Oh, I think the legislature is very concerned about that part of our economic vitality as a state. So when we can go up to the legislature in our session, during the session, and say, you know, here's the kind of success we have with students who are transferring, and here's the kind of success we have getting people into the marketplace with a certificate or an AAS degree and getting right into the workforce, that in this state, economic development is critical.
But yet at the same time, I mean, this year accepted, and I want to talk about this
Yeah.
year's legislative session, but this year accepted, overall the state funding has dropped precipitously, and in the 10 years I've been here, student tuition has freaking doubled.
Yeah, I know.
Which seems very counter to what you're saying about creating this place where people will be ready for jobs that'll bring in new industry.
Well, I would say that in the last 3 years, maybe 3 to 4 years, Salt Lake Community College's reputation and credibility as a provider for higher education and as an institution that needs to be resourced differently, has started to take hold. And I think that's part of what we saw this legislative session, is we saw our legislative body really start to recognize the role higher education plays in the economic vitality of this state. And so, yes, our statewide funding has been going down and our tuition's gone up. This year, we actually flipped that. I mean, with a significant windfall. Now, our job is to keep that balance, right? And it got out of balance. Honestly, it got out of balance over the last decade. You're absolutely right. So now our job is to stay mindful of that and keep the pressure on the legislature and on our business leaders to say we need to have affordable, state-funded higher education opportunities for our citizens.
Resourced differently was the phrase you used.
Yes.
In Utah, it seems too often that the whole entire pie of higher education, the U, Dixie, Weber, everybody wants the same student because we get funded by student.
Yes.
Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
We should be resourced differently?
So what happened this year was the Board of Regents commissioned a study about 3 years ago that looked at across the nation how are community colleges funded, state tuition, percentage, proportion, how are universities funded, how are state colleges funded. And what they found was that nationally, community colleges are typically funded 70% by the state or local taxes and 30% by tuition sources, okay? So the state and the local governments are really contributing in a large part to a community college education because the students that are coming to community college are usually, cost is a significant factor for them often, right? What was happening in Utah was it was 50-50. And some of our universities were actually being funded 70-30. So you have universities that have other places where they can drive revenue, right? Their research grants that they can pull revenue in. And in many cases, more funding opportunities for students to come to a university. And frankly, in many cases, more affluent students who can afford higher tuition. So the system of higher education was phenomenal. They built this case around how do we start to look at community colleges being funded at a more nationally recognized proportion.
Which is where we were in the 90s. I mean,
Yeah.
Utah was about 75-25 for Salt Lake Community College only, 20 years ago or less?
Right. And we were about 50-50 last year, and this year we're about almost 60-40.
So we are going the other way.
So we're going a better way. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it is unusual that we're funded out of the same pot. I mean, many states fund community colleges more like K through 12.
Yes.
But we don't do that.
Well, many states have local levies. So
Right.
in many states, community colleges are funded through local tax bases. And that's phenomenal because if you're really serving your community well, and as a community college you want to go out and get support from the community, they have great success doing that because they really see the connection.
Yeah.
Utah's never been a local tax
Right.
kind of state, so we're going after the same pot that all
Right,
of our
it's
other sister
hard to compete with the
institutions.
U when the legislatures can see research part.
Yes, but I have to give a shout out to my partners at the University of Utah, Utah State, SUU. This year, those presidents really stood by some of the other colleges to allow us to get that equity funding, and they did not get a piece of that pie. And President Pershing, President Wyatt, President Albrecht were very supportive of Salt Lake Community College and UVU and Weber and others getting a significant part of that pie without them really benefiting.
All right, shout out to them.
Yeah,
when we
shout out.
come back, I want to talk about some of these buzzwords, and I want to talk about a couple specific programs we have going on here at the college. So when we come back, we'll get into that. This is Community Roundtable, talking with Dr. Deneece Huftalin, Interim President, Salt Lake Community College. Keep it tuned. So we are back on Community Roundtable with Dr. Deneece Huftalin. One of these hot buzzwords is completion.
Yes.
And it's not like people didn't want students to finish college before.
Right.
But there is this push on sort of get students completed and open up a seat for somebody else.
Yes.
And one of the things that we have here at Salt Lake Community College is this General Education Step Ahead program.
Right.
So tell me about that a little bit.
Okay, so Gen Ed Step Ahead is really designed, all of the research shows us that cohort-based smaller communities really help students stay connected. So what we've done with Gen Ed Step Ahead is we source it all at one campus, so students are coming to the same campus. They're going to back-to-back Gen Ed classes with the same number of, or the same group of students, and it allows them to get all of their general education requirements done in 2 semesters. For many of our students, especially those that want to transfer, general education is a time to explore we see general education as a time to explore and decide what you're passionate about. Many students see it as a big hoop that they have to jump through. So we're trying as an institution to really make it a more meaningful experience. When you package it like that, you can start to create, what are the connections between these disciplines? How do we integrate this curriculum so it's more meaningful to students? Plus, it's more efficient for students, and then they can transfer in a faster way. So that's been very, very successful. We'll have that here at the Taylorsville Redwood campus. Well, I think we're starting one at our South City campus. So we're trying to build that and allow that opportunity for more and more students.
And that's not only Salt Lake Community College. I mean, that's nationwide, that
Yes.
if you put students together and keep them together,
Absolutely.
the outcomes will be better, students will do better, they make friends and all of that. I
Right.
mean, doesn't this seem kind of obvious? I mean,
It's very obvious, but when you grow, it's really where it came. I mean, I think where some of the original freshman interest groups like FIGS, University of Washington started that maybe 20 years ago, and the reason they did that is that they were growing like crazy as a university, and the undergraduate experience was getting lost. So trying to make that smaller makes more sense for those big institutions. Now, we're not very big. Our classes are 20, 25 students. But by packaging together back to back, we could create that cohort, and that really helps students. Other students notice when you're not there. And so you've got some engagement, you've got some accountability as a student, and your peers and your faculty really influence your ability to stay and retain.
you got people to date and people
Yeah,
to party with.
why
I mean,
not?
it's college,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So I want to go back to something you just mentioned about these students who just take their generals and, what do you say as interim president here? Because I hear this all the time, and, I teach here, that, I'm just doing my generals.
Yeah.
It's Redwood High.
Yeah.
That somehow this community college is somehow less than another institution of higher ed, and
Yeah.
it bothers me, but what's your take on that?
My take on that, again, so I've been here 22 years. My take on that is that that's gotten significantly less in the last decade. I think the quality of our faculty is starting to be noticed more and more. We have faculty that are winning awards. We have faculty that are publishing. We have faculty leading in industry. So I think in many ways that reputation of I'm just going to the community college has dissipated a bit. I think nationally community colleges and university are always going to fight that kind of elitist versus, battle. But I think we've done some good things as a college, and I think once a student gets here, I can't tell you how many students have said to me, I didn't really know where I wanted to go. I just came here because I didn't know where else to go. But once they got here and they had their first experience with some of our faculty, they were hooked. And they come back after transferring to great schools and say, my best experience was at Salt Lake Community College. The quality, the faculty, the support was beyond compare.
So what else, thank you, what else helps students finish quicker? We mentioned this notion of cohorts, but
Yeah.
what else is a good thing that's going on?
Well, we're trying, now this is really hard for students because they work, they've got families, but the more we can push students to be full-time students. If you're taking 9 credits, just take 12. If you're taking 12, try to take 15. That's hard, I get it. It's hard for some of our students. But the longer you're a part-time student, the easier it is to step away. Life gets in the way. So wherever possible, if we can incentivize scholarships that demand that you're a 12 credit hour student, or working options on campus that allow you to kind of reduce your workloads elsewhere and take 12 credit hours, that's really key, I think, to completion.
Okay, thanks. We've only got a couple minutes left,
Okay.
but I did want to ask you about the Carnegie Foundation
Yeah.
and this classification for community engagement.
Yes.
You mentioned the Carnegie Foundation. It makes us seem very hoity-toity and big time here.
That's what we want,
Yeah.
hoity-toity. So we've had, in fact, Emma Lou Thane is the namesake for our Thane Community Service Center, and we've been doing community service and service learning throughout the college for many, many years. The Carnegie Classification kind of takes service learning and community service and kind of institutionalizes it and looks across your curriculum, across your programs, and says, are you an engaged member of your community? And how do you prove that? And if you can prove that, you get this distinction. Some of our institutions across Utah already have that distinction, and we'd like to have that as well. So we've just developed a very comprehensive application. We've just submitted it, and we'll learn in January whether we'll get that classification.
Okay. I mean, it sounds quite fun.
Yes.
What about, I wanted to ask real quick, and we're almost out of time, but what are you looking for in the next president? assuming it's not
Yes,
you.
I think I'm looking for someone who can, I think we've done great work. We're situated beautifully. I think we need a president who can continue to build strong relationships with university, college partners, and industry partners, so a relationship builder. I'm also looking for a president who has this notion of inclusivity and making college accessible and affordable and a welcoming place for folks from all different backgrounds and cultures. I think that's essential as we try to reach that 66% goal.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for you yourself, your goals as interim president?
My goals are try to tee things up for the new president, kind of put some things in place that a new president can launch from, that they feel like they're walking into a well-run, well-situated environment, that they can just move forward and they don't have a lot of cleanup to do. So, and I think we're okay there.
And just to be clear for our audience, is your hat in the ring for the president?
No. As the interim, I'm not eligible to apply for the presidency, so I'm the interim.
So you're specifically looking forward to going back to the student services side?
Yeah, I love student services. Great,
All right.
Great place to be.
So what else should be the takeaway if you wanted to say one thing to folks about Salt Lake Community College? I mean, inclusivity, diversity, small classes,
affordable, quality faculty. Our faculty are phenomenal. I mean, I think faculty in some ways are hidden gems here. So I would say if you've not been on one of our campuses, you need to come to one of our campuses and just walk through it and just feel it, get the sense of it, and then if it works for you, I want you to find a way to come and take 1 or 2 classes or enroll full time.
Great. We're going to have to leave it there.
Okay, thanks.
Dr. Deneece Huftalin, Interim President, Salt Lake Community College. This is Community Roundtable. Maybe you have a question, maybe you have a comment, maybe you have an idea for a future show. Please get in touch with us. You can contact us, try it by email, roundtable@slcctv.com. Don't forget, of course, also you can watch all of our episodes. They're archived and streamed online at slcctv.com. I'm Nick Burns. Keep it tuned to SLCC TV.